I thought love was just tender embraces and sweet kisses, until I realized it's also about responsibility and sacrifice. Chapter 13. I can give you a painkiller, but other than that you'll have to just heal up on your own. I don't have anything to speed up the healing process, the doctor informed us, giving me a pitiful smile and handing me a pill with a glass of water. How long are her painkillers going to last? Gabriel asked from his position behind me. He had refused to let go of me, and I didn't mind. They should last until tomorrow. And then I'd advise some ibuprofen. The bruising will probably keep developing through the night, but then it will start to go away after that. Swelling will be minimal, she informed, walking out of the room. Gabriel sighed and cuddled into me. I'm so sorry. I turned my head and pressed a kiss to his jaw. I already told you, I whispered back. It's not your fault. I love you. I should have been there, Gabriel chanted, rocking us on the bed. My heart T-winged and I teared up. You were there. I am okay thanks to you, I explained, the tears slipping out. I felt myself being picked up and turned around. Hush. Love. Don't cry. Gabriel cooed, smoothing my hair back and wiping away my tears. I just really care about you, and I don't like that you are blaming yourself. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐸, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Oh, stop. I won't if it will make you happy, he pledged. I nodded. Take me home. Cuddling him, choking out a laugh. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐸, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Sweetheart. Gabriel nodded, scooping me up and walking out the door. His body was so warm I didn't need a coat, but he wrapped me up in a blanket before we walked out of the clinic anyway. I rested my head on his shoulder, and the gentle rocking from his walking lulled me into a state of half-consciousness. We're here, sweetheart, Gabriel whispered in my ear, pressing a kiss to my head. I think I mumbled something in response, but I was too tired to remember. I felt myself being set down on something soft before I was wrapped up in something warm again. I snuggled into the warmth and let dreams consume me. I could feel fingers running through my hair and felt a smile on my face. I kept my eyes closed, enjoying the moment. Good morning, sweetheart, a husky voice whispered in my ear. I flinched at the sudden noise and my elbow hit something. My eyes popped open and I saw Gabriel grimacing and holding his arm. I'm sorry, I mumbled, still feeling groggy. Enthusiasm. In my days, I decided the most reasonable way to help him feel better was throwing myself onto him. Gabriel caught me and chuckled, leaning back into the headboard and positioning me on his chest. If this is how you apologize, you can hurt me anytime, Gabriel promised, resuming running his fingers through my hair. Shy instructed sleepily. I reached to pull the comforter up on my body again and shut my eyes. Are you going to wake up? Hissing the top of my head. Sighing deeply. I must have fallen asleep again because the next time I woke up Gabriel was having a hushed phone conversation. I want you to meet her too, but I don't want to overwhelm her, he was saying. I cuddled into his side further and felt his gaze on me. She's perfect. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐸, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I don't deserve her, Gabriel said. I fluttered my eyes open and smiled up at Gabriel. Good morning. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐸, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐸, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Stretching in his arms, his eyes darkened and he hung up the phone without finishing his conversation. Gabriel. I slapped his arm softly. Aren't you going to say goodbye? He shook his head and his eyes returned to their normal coloring now. My mate woke up, and it's my job to take care of her, he replied sweetly. I blushed and hid my face in his chest. His laughter rang out in the air and I blushed deeper. Are you always this adorable in the morning? I pulled my head out of his chest and stuck my tongue out. Do you have an extra toothbrush I can borrow? I want to shower and brush my teeth before we do anything else, I explained, sitting up and scooting away from Gabriel. He reached out for me with a sad look on his face and I sent him a stern look. Fine. Climbing out of bed and chucking me up, I squealed and wrapped my arms and legs around him tightly. Gabe, I whined. Put me down. He was chuckling before he gently set me down on the bathroom counter, producing a toothbrush and a fluffy towel. Have fun with your shower. I'll get started on breakfast, he cooed, leaning in and pecking the tip of my nose. I scrunched my nose and giggled. He pulled away with a smile on his face. I love having you here, Gabriel whispered, smiling. I giggled and flicked him. Whatever, you dog. I need to shower, I informed him, hopping off the counter and ushering him out the door. I washed my body as quick as I could, scrubbing all the grime and sweat and makeup off from my night on the town. I shuddered when I thought about Gabriel seeing me looking the way I did, but he didn't run away screaming, so I figured he didn't mind as much as I did. I had hoped there would be a gender-neutral body wash or shampoo, but Gabriel only had Old Spice, so I smelled like him when I stepped out and wrapped the towel around myself. It was then that I remembered I didn't have any clean clothes, so I cringed and walked out into Gabriel's room. I had been half asleep earlier, so I hadn't taken the time to take in his impressive room. It was the most obscenely large room I had ever seen. Even the bed was huge. I suppose I understood since Gabriel was an obscenely large person, but it was still shocking to see. I found his closet and threw on a big, black, long-sleeve shirt that seemed to swallow me whole in a pair of clean boxers. I finger-combed my hair since I couldn't find a hairdresser, and I decided to find wherever it was that Gabriel was. Gabe. Opening the bedroom door. He didn't answer, so I gingerly stepped out of the room and began my search for the stairs. I saw a door at the end of the hallway and determined it was my best shot. Unfortunately, when I opened the door, it just led to another hallway. I followed the new hallway around a few corners before I finally found a set of stairs inside. I hope the kitchen is this way, I yelled, hoping he would hear this time and be able to guide me. I began my descent, and by the third landing, I was cursing myself for not staying awake the night before. Gabriel, if you don't come and help me right now, I swear you will be in so much trouble, I screamed as loud as I could. I decided to take a breather, and I propped myself against the wall. I heard a clang, followed by some thumping before Gabriel was right in front of me, looking both amused and worried. You lost? Looking at me with pity, I said, and glared at him, crossing my arms across my chest. How was I supposed to know you lived in a freaking mansion? I grumbled. He sighed and scooped me up. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have told you, or given you directions. I forgot. Gabriel apologized, kissing my forehead. You've been super touchy-feely lately, I observed, pushing away from him. He growled softly and held me tighter. I just love you. That's all. I rolled my eyes, a smile of my own blossoming against my will. Great. Then you can take me to the kitchen. I'm so hungry, I complained. He winced as if my hunger caused him physical pain before he used his super speed, and we were in the kitchen in a flash. Are waffles okay, love? Setting me on a chair, I smiled brightly. I love waffles. Thank you, I laughed, feeling giddy, and pecked his cheek. No problem, sweetheart, Gabriel replied, kissing my cheek right back. I noticed that we hadn't kissed since the break had been over, and I was feeling surprisingly annoyed about it. The waffles were amazing, and I enjoyed just being with Gabriel at his house. I felt like I was finally home. What are we doing today? Wiping my lips with a napkin. Gabriel's eyes glazed over as they followed the movement, and I snapped my fingers in front of him to regain his attention. Whatever you would like. I just want to be with you, Gabriel admitted. I thought for a minute or two, trying to decide what I really wanted to do before I perked up. I want to meet your friends, I announced with a proud smile on my face. It was a great idea. You what? I looked at him innocently. What? I can't meet your friends. Are you embarrassed by me? No, he shouted. I could never be embarrassed by you, sweetheart. It's just I wasn't thinking that was something you would like to do right now. Well, I assessed, standing up and pouting. He rose to his feet as well, cupping my cheeks with his hands. We can meet my friend Joel if you want. I leaned forward and pecked him on the lips lightening fast. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐾𝐜 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. That was the one you were on the phone with earlier. Right. I wondered aloud. He nodded with a dazed expression on his face. Sure is, he informed me, leaning in to plant another kiss on my lips. I turned my head at the last second and his kiss landed on my cheeks. You can have another one after I meet your friend. Holding out a pinky, he laughed at my childish behavior and hooked his pinky with mine. Well, I guess I had better get him over here fast. Gabriel teased. I snorted and sucked him in the arm. Yes, you had. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐾𝐜 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Wouldn't want to have to find someone else to kiss. I have learned many lessons in my 20 years on this planet. I have learned how to ride a bike, how to pay taxes, how to write any mail. But hands down, the most important lesson I learned was learned that very day. Do not make an alpha jealous. What was that? Gabriel growled out. I stiffened when I noticed the dangerous edge to his voice. I was suddenly reminded that my boyfriend wasn't human and it could very possibly snap me in half. Nothing, I mumbled, shuffling away from him slowly. His sharp eyes narrowed in on the movement before they looked back at me again. Challenging lie. That wasn't nothing, he refuted. In that moment I lost all control of my body. It was as if I was possessed by the ancient 𝐾𝐜𝐬 ancestors who spent their life from gateway from danger. Flight, from the fight or flight theory, seemed to have been the dominant trait in my family because I took off sprinting at a speed I didn't know was possible, shrieking in half terror, half hilarity. There was a loud growl behind me, and I felt another burst of speed. I felt like I was practically flying. Two strong arms snagged me around the waist, but instantly the terror faded away, and all I was left with was amusement. I let my unrestrained laughter ring out as Gabriel swung me around, his face in my neck. When he planted both of my feet on the ground, I sighed, snuggling back into him, and letting my head lean on his chest. I closed my eyes and was sure that the look on my face was one of pure content as my city-possessive alpha pressed light kisses to my neck. Mine, he grumbled. I laughed again, turning around in his arms and giving him a big smile. Don't I know it? Sending him a wink. You did that on purpose, he accused. I was going to reply, distracted by the way the light hit his hair and made it look celestial. I was just zoning back in when I heard Gabriel muttering under his breath. I leaned my head back so I could get a better look at his face. What? He smoldered and I blushed under his intense stare. I was thanking God for giving me you as a mate. I can't promise that I will be perfect, but I can promise that I will love you, that I will take care of you, and I will always be here for you. My queen. He spoke truthfully, his deep voice resonating through the room. Oh my. I couldn't make him any such extravagant promises yet, but I did know that I felt an emotion for him. Strongly. Instead of trying to articulate the way I felt, I just leaned forward and pressed my lips to his, hoping he would understand what I couldn't say out loud. When he broke our kiss to rest our foreheads together and just look at one another, I knew he did. Chapter 14. Gabriel was holding me tightly in his lap, pressing an occasional peck to my lips. I was blushing something furious, but he wouldn't let go of me, and I wasn't trying to get away too hard. Then I remembered something and shot up. Gabriel, I gasped. He stared at me in confused amusement. I sent him a playful glare. What did I do? I put my hands on my hips and did my best to intimidate him. You promised that I could meet your friend Joel, and I promised you wouldn't get to kiss me until after that happened, I exclaimed. Gabriel just leaned back against the couch cushions with a so what look on his face. You tricked me. No more kisses. stomping over to an armchair on the other side of the room and stretching it out so my cuddy boyfriend wouldn't follow me. "Are you serious?" he grumbled, rising to his feet and glowering at me. I held my ground. "Deadly," I replied as frosty as possible. He took a step toward me and I glared harder. "Joel's on his way. What's the problem?" Gabriel growled. I blushed. "I don't see why it's such a big deal to you." His closeness making me nervous and therefore louder. "I don't see why it's such a big deal to you," he countered, only 2 steps away from my chair now. "It's the principle. We promised and I don't like to break promises." I tried to explain. Gabriel paused, like he was going to think about it, before he lunged and scooped me up off the chair and pressed me against his chest. I tried to be angry but I was laughing too much. "Gabriel," still giggling, "let me go." "Never," he replied, his eyes a shade darker and his voice taking a more serious tone. I suddenly felt as if he was saying something more profound, making a promise that ran deeper and it sent chills down my arms to my fingertip. I couldn't stop myself. I closed my eyes, leaned forward and pressed a fierce kiss on his lips, wrapping my arms tightly around his neck. He groaned and tightened his grip on me, his fingers putting a delicious pressure on my hips. Then there was a loud bang. The natural reaction. And Gabriel, apparently having some sort of psychotic episode, had flipped us onto the ground, his body covering mine entirely. "Get off," I yelled, shoving at his chest and thrashing under him. He growled at me angrily and 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸. "Oh no. Nope. You don't get to growl at me like I'm one of your little dog buddies. If you don't apologize right now, you are going to regret it," I threatened sternly. Gabriel glared right back. "You can argue with me when I'm protecting you, sweetheart," he commanded like it was some sort of oath I had taken, as if I had to take everything he said and obey it verbatim. "Oh yes, I can and oh yes, I will." That hurt. It was weird. "And you haven't apologized, so I'm going to take away some privileges," I asked. I paused for a moment, registering that I sounded like a teacher and smiling to myself. "What now?" "I won't apologize." Gabriel rolled his eyes, climbing off of me. I shoved him aside and brushed myself off, standing up. "If you haven't apologized by the time I do the 5 count, I won't let you have sleepovers with me for a week." He didn't lessen his annoyed glare, so I sighed heavily. I couldn't believe how childish he was acting. 1 to 3.4. I was sure he would say something but he didn't, so I shrugged. 5 no more sleepovers this week. "That's not fair," Gabriel complained like a 5-year-old. "Neither is throwing me onto the ground and then growling at me. Now apologize before I get to 5 again." He still looked annoyed, so I smiled and started my count. For 0.5 he looked unimpressed, so I leveled him with my best "I have the upper hand" smile. "No more kisses this week. On the cheek and the mouth." "What?" Looking disproportionately upset, I saw a man standing in the doorway. Out of the corner of my eye, refused to acknowledge him until Gabriel would man up and apologize. My dad used to say that you could tell the men from the boys by how willing they are to accept their mistakes. He told me I was only allowed to date men, and I promised him that. If you can't accept that growling at me, someone who is supposedly your soulmate for doing nothing wrong, was a mistake then, soulmate or not, I can't be with you, even if it kills me. I'm serious about this. Gabe. Crossing my arms and trying to hide the pain I felt when I spoke about my dad. "Viola," he sounded angry still, and I shot him a teary-eyed glare. "Unless you are about to apologize, the next words that come out of your mouth will mean crap to me." Wiping away my eyes and turning to face who I assumed was Joel. "Hello." I plastered a bright smile on my face. "Hi, sorry if this is a bad time." He seemed uncertain. I noticed he was tall, almost as tall as Gabriel. He was handsome too. I noted his hair was longer, curling past his ears. I preferred a slightly shorter cut, but I could appreciate his appearance. I heard a low growl from behind me and tensed up. "Nope. It's just fine. You must be Joel." Holding my hand out to shake his He smiled and reached for mine when Gabriel stepped between us. 𝐿𝐻𝐿𝐬𝐻𝐿𝐬 𝐂𝐥𝐻𝐿𝐬𝐻𝐿𝐬. He asserted his dominance by crossing his arms and positioning his leg shoulder with the part. I ignored him and stepped to the side, shaking Joel's hand firmly. I saw a gleam of approval in his eye when he shook my hand and was grateful I had grown up shaking so many people's hands at my stepdad's work functions. It's so nice to meet you. Gabriel doesn't really tell me anything, so I'm really glad to have met someone else in his life. Joel laughed while Gabriel glowered. That's just like him to keep you all to himself. He won't stop talking about you. I don't think I've had a day's rest since he met you. I've only heard good things. Smiling back, I have a lot of questions for you, I informed him, turning around and walking back towards the furniture. I noticed there were 2 armchairs and a couch. I knew that Gabriel expected for me to sit on the couch with him, but I expected him to apologize, so I resolved that both of us would be disappointed. I sat in an armchair. Joel gulped, completely sober to the tension in the room, and Gabriel shot me a dark look, which I ignored. I watched as Joel sat on the couch and tried to hide a small smile behind at the sound of the other armchair being scraped along the floor toward me. He was such a toddler. What are your questions? I'll do my best to answer them, Joel promised. I nodded, taking in a deep breath. 𝐿𝐻𝐿𝐬𝐻𝐿𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, 𝐿𝐻𝐬𝐧𝐬. How long have you two known each other? I felt Gabriel pressing tightly against my chair. Our whole lives. We are only a few months apart. We were really just acquaintances through elementary school. But when we shifted into our wolves at the end of middle school, we were kind of thrown together. The alpha gene is passed down by generation typically, but most other wolf rankings are surprises until we shift for the first time. When we realized I was going to be his beta, we started hanging out more. We've been friends for 15 years now, Joel explained, a faraway look in his eyes when he spoke of their childhood. My heart warmed. These were the kinds of personal details I wanted to know about Gabriel. What's a beta? I wondered. He didn't tell you. Joel seemed shocked. I blushed, feeling embarrassed I didn't know. Shut it, Gabriel demanded harshly. I ignored him once again and shoved off the hand that was trying to sneak its way around my shoulders. He doesn't tell me a lot of things. So, what is it? I prompted. Joel cleared his throat, glancing nervously at Gabriel before continuing. Basically, I'm the second in command. If anything were to happen to Gabriel, I would take over as alpha until another was appointed or born, Joel explained. I felt sick at the thought of something happening to Gabriel, and I guess it showed because Joel was quick to calm my fears. It's extremely rare that betas are used in that way. I mostly handle things when the alpha is out of town or busy in meetings, so why would the alpha ever need to go out of town? I wondered. Meetings with other alphas. Wars. 𝐿𝐻𝐬𝐳. I cut him off with a panicked shriek. 𝐿𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐻𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, 𝐿𝐻𝐬𝐳. Yes, wars. Did you think wars were peaceful creatures? We plant trees to mark our territory. You can't expect that we would be completely rational beings when we are more primal instinct than human, Joel informed me, looking shocked at my shock. I didn't imagine. 𝐿𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐻𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, 𝐿𝐻𝐬𝐳. I questioned feebly. He nodded stiffly, looking apologetic. They aren't often. Only every few years. He tried to reassure me. My fear spiked again. Do you know how often wars should happen? Never. Those other werewolves have families. They have kids, and neighbors, and friends, and mates. Why would you ever go and attack them? I monologued, stressed. Then a horrible thought occurred to me. Have you ever killed someone? I demanded. I'm not sure how to answer that question, Joel admitted, looking a little frazzled. Gabriel was trying to comfort me, but I kept ignoring him and swatting his hands away. Yes or no? Yes, Joel looked defeated and awkward. I stood up out of my chair and began pacing. I knew it was different in the wild. Wolves killed wolves all the time. I was just upset because there was humanity involved. People killing people made me feel sick to my stomach. I didn't care if they were thinking as if they were a wolf at that moment. They still took a life. Okay, we need to switch subject. Now, I decided. Joel nodded, letting out a nervous laugh. Do you have any siblings? Joel got a big goofy smile on his face and I felt a tentative smile of my own blossom. I have an older brother. He's one of my best friends. I also have a little sister. She's a little feisty, but life wouldn't be the same without her. He explained. My heart warmed. That's so cool that you have such a close relationship with your family. I glanced at the clock and my eyes widened when I saw the time. Well, as fun as this little chat was, I do need to head back to town. Joel nodded. I'm going to head there myself. I can walk you off if you like. I thought about his offer but I declined. No thank you. I need to talk to Gabriel anyway. The trip will give us a chance to talk. He nodded and walked out the door. As soon as the door was shut behind him, Gabriel's hand plucked me up from my seat and onto his lap, burying his nose in my neck and grinned slightly. I'm sorry for growling at you. I know it's not an excuse, but I was startled, and my only thought was of protecting you. When you talked, I was worried whoever it was going to hear you and hurt you. I'm sorry, I growled. I forget that you aren't like me sometimes. I forget how fragile you are. And when I feel you are in danger, it's as if I lose all control. Please forgive me, Gabriel begged, practically shaking. I tangled my hands in his hair, massaging his scalp. The low moan he let out showed his appreciation at the action. I forgive you. Please don't growl at me like that again, though. I am not from your world. I don't understand everything you want me to. And I'm sorry that we are going to have to overcome that. I care about you a lot and I don't like feeling like you don't respect me. I explained. Gabriel tore his head out from my neck and looked into my eyes. I didn't know. I pressed a quick kiss to his lips, pulling away before he could deepen it. I know. That's why I told you. I hope you understand that just because you apologize now doesn't mean you don't get your consequences, though. To my 𝐿𝐸𝐧𝐷 𝐷𝐞𝐝, 𝐿𝐸𝐧𝐷. Standing up and pulling him to his feet. He pouted, but I just laughed and shoved him to him playfully. Take me home, Gabe. When we were in the car and halfway down the mountain, I decided to rip off the band-aid. Have you ever killed someone? Chapter 15. He didn't answer. To my 𝐿𝐸𝐧𝐷 𝐿𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐃. He didn't answer. I knew what that meant to. He was defensive and avoiding the question, almost scared to reveal the truth. He dropped me off at my apartment, with an air kiss that broke the tension enough for me to give him a hug before I walked back inside my lonely apartment and locked the door. I leaned my back against it as my thoughts raced on. Finding out that your significant other has killed before should be terrifying. I suppose it was. But what was most heartbreaking wasn't that knowledge. Somehow I knew I could learn to live with that regardless. I could fall in love with him regardless. What hurt me the most was that he wouldn't be honest. So I set my mind to do some relationship Googling to try and diagnose our issue. What I found was shocking. Despite my efforts to move our relationship towards a route of clear communication and equality, I was only aggravating the issue. Gabriel had some obvious separation anxieties, coupled with his insecurities. My reflex of separating us and asking for some time hadn't actually solved anything. It had just added to his insecurities and fears of me leaving him. My eyes welled with tears as I realized the extent of my actions. My first thought was to call him, but I was worried that he was going to be busy. At least that was what I told myself. My real fear was that he was going to be fed up with my problematic solutions and break up with me. So instead of picking up my phone, I finally started my paper on how to teach students with 𝐷𝐸𝐳𝐸𝐸. It had been 3 days since I last spoke to Gabriel. I missed him. My heart ached and I felt the weight of his absence heavily. I had been so busy with classes and work and homework that I hadn't had the opportunity to talk to him since he had dropped me off. My skin was tinted slightly grey. The bags under my eyes darkened and achy. My muscles were sore and I felt exhausted mentally and physically. My every thought was of him. I wore his sweatshirt to bed every night, his scent bringing me a little peace. Changing out of it was the worst part of my day and I dreaded it. "You all right?" Morgan asked as we locked up the cafe that evening. "No," I sighed, pulling my phone out of my pocket. "But I'm hoping I will be in a few minutes. Get home safe. 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐼𝐻𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐼𝐻𝐸. Morgan laughed and nodded, walking toward the bus stop. I sat down on the cold concrete bench and looked at my surroundings. The trees lining the woods were just across the empty road. I dialed a number I had memorized. I shivered as I waited for the ringing to stop, hugging my thin blue jacket closer to my body. "Hello. I need you, sweetheart. What's going on? Where are you? Please," I begged, my voice breaking. "I need you." It was all I could say. The words were the truest I had ever spoken. "Are you hurt? What's wrong?" "I'm running. I'll be there so soon," he was assuring me. I felt a tear slip and I sniffled, a soft smile on my face. He still cared. I hadn't messed things up so badly because of my stupidity. "Hurry," was all I said before I hung up. I wrapped my arms around me as the chilly winter air seeped into my bones. I heard pounding feet a minute later and looked up to see the man I hadn't stopped thinking about running as fast as he could towards me. I took off straight for him too, not even looking both ways as I flew across the road, throwing myself into his arms, wrapping my legs tightly around his waist and my arms tightly around his neck, convinced I would never let him go. My face burrowed into his neck that I felt grow slick with my tears. His arms were like steel bars pressing me tighter and tighter against him, his breathing shallow and his heart pounding. I was whimpering slightly at the contact. The instantaneous relief and peace that flowed through me were causing my body to shake. "Sweetheart, please," he begged. His voice sounded tortured. "Tell me what's wrong. Tell me what happened and I swear I will fix it." His hands were now combing my hair soothingly while his legs walked us over to the bench that was off to the side of a trail leading into the wood. I'm an idiot, refusing to remove myself from his neck. I was very comfortable, and I had missed him. "No, who told you that?" Gabriel sounded enraged and I couldn't help but let out a side laugh. I'm so lucky to have you. You know that." Reluctantly pulling away enough to look into the eyes I had so dearly missed. He looked surprised and that broke my heart too. He should be used to hearing that. I should have told him more. You're kind. That is one of the most important qualities in a person in my opinion. You put my needs and safety before anything and anyone. That is remarkable. You are strong. You are fearless. You are funny, which is something I have always admired. And you really care. About me, about us, and about our future. I have been craving that for a long time now, and I have never felt safer and more cared for than when I am with you. Never once looking away from his eyes. I felt tears welling up again at the truthfulness of my words, praying that he understood how serious I was. "I don't deserve you," Gabriel started to say, but I interrupted. "Don't you dare finish that. Gabriel, I don't know a lot about your world, or how this whole mate thing works exactly, but I do know this: what we have is forever. You are made for me and vice versa. It's not about deserving, it's about belonging, and we belong together." He looked stunned, slightly amused, a little confused, and emotional. "I really love you," Gabriel admitted, closing his eyes and resting his forehead on mine. I shouldn't have kept asking for space all those times. I didn't know how else to cope and I thought it was the best route. But I know better now. I won't be making that mistake ever again. I care about you, Gabe, and if I haven't proved it to you by now, then I guess I will have to spend the rest of my life proving it. I am not leaving anytime soon, I whispered, desperately willing him to understand. I traced over his jaw lightly with my hands, reveling in the touch. "Can I take you home?" I'm going to take you home, Gabriel said, standing us up and strolling down the road. I would have been embarrassed 3 months ago, but now I was just comfortable. Things were different with Gabriel than I had ever imagined they could be. I think I fell asleep on the walk back because next thing I can remember is feeling Gabriel rummaging in my purse for my keys. I woke up enough to sleepily pull them out for him and unlock the door before he nudged his way inside and we walked to my bedroom. I was conscious enough to start mumbling apologize about the state of my room. I had been too stressed to clean it properly. Gabriel only smiled softly, saying it was all right before he kissed my forehead. Can I stay? He asked quietly, setting me on the bed. I didn't even bother responding, instead throwing my arms around his neck and yanking him on top of me. Rolling over so he wasn't crushing me and pressed a kiss to my temple. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐬 𝐊𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐬. Everything was back to normal. Mind if I take off my jeans? They're a little uncomfortable to sleep in, Gabriel whispered. I opened my eyes and glared at him. Only if you take off your shirt and give it to me, I demanded. He shouted out off and happily stripped, tossing me the t-shirt. I flopped out of bed, clumsily trying to take off my uniform. When I ripped the shirt off, I heard Gabriel gasp and I snorted. Control yourself, dummy. What did you just call me? Disbelief was evident in his tone. I yanked the shirt down and collapsed back onto the bed. A dummy. I'm tired. I've had a rough week. Let's just go to bed, I groaned, tugging on his warm hand. I shut my eyes as he crawled onto the bed behind me, his arms circling around me and tucking me into his side. I'm so sorry, love. Nuzzling in. I am too. Now let's go to bed. I have so many things to tell you tomorrow, I promised before I promptly fell asleep, feeling safe in the arms of the one I was very close to loving. Good morning, sweetheart. Gabriel's voice was in my ear. I groaned and stretched before curling further into him. He chuckled and pulled me on top of him, the sudden movement waking me up a little more. My eyes peeled open and I stretched again, cocking my back. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Leaning in to nuzzle his neck, his chest rumbled, letting me know that the more primal side of him was pleased with our position. What do you have to do today? Turning on his side and propping his head up on his elbow, I rolled onto my stomach, kicking my feet in the air and giving him an innocent smile. Nothing yet. His eyes lit up and a slow, sexy smile blossomed on his face. Spend the day with me. I have some more people I'd like to introduce you to if you're interested. I felt my heart stutter. Something about him trying to include me in his life just felt so right that it stunned me. I would love to, was my honest reply. He sat up ready to leave when I remembered something. Gabe? I asked shyly. He turned at the serious tone of my voice. Yes, Viola. I sat up criss-cross on the bed, facing him and twiddling my thumbs. I wanted to apologize. I am not very good with relationships. They scare me. I have always dreamed of love and a husband and a family. I want it all, but I let out a frustrated sound at the way the words seemed to escape me. Take your time, he encouraged. I tucked a strand of my long hair behind my ear. I don't feel entirely comfortable. His expression showed reserved hurt and that sent me backpedaling. That came out wrong. I am so comfortable with you. I love spending time with you and you make me feel so safe. I groaned again and he chuckled lightly. You don't have to tell me, Gabriel said. I shook my head, annoyed at myself and wringing my fingers together again. No, I do. I just like you so much. And I know that you like me too. I finally found the words and they ripped out of my mouth before I could process them. I'm scared to fall in love. Once I had an English teacher who had a poster with a quote on it. Silence is a deep eternity. Speak your shallow as time. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐬 Carlyle. I never understood the quote until the silence followed my exclamation. It wasn't real silence. I heard the whirring of the air conditioning, the water of a neighboring apartment flowing through the pipes, The mechanical ringing of a TV. Quiet noises made unbelievably loud in the absence of the one voice I longed to hear more than anything else. My own breathing was deep. Panicked. I looked into Gabriel's eyes to see that he was right in front of me, seeming to assess the situation. "Gabriel," I whispered. He sat beside me, pulling me into his lap to cradle me against his chest. "I can't change your fears or feelings, Viola, but I do love you, and I promise that if you fall in love with me, I will take care of your heart." Those tenderly uttered words spoke to my soul, calming my deepest anxieties. It's just, everyone always says that a life together is so hard, and I saw what it did to my mom when Dad died. It terrifies me to become so dependent on someone else. I don't want that kind of ending. I want happy. I want smiles. I want all the good and most of the bad, but I am just so scared that as soon as I fall in love. I trailed off, something dawning on me. I pressed on and ignored the thought for the moment though. As soon as I fall in love, I will be vulnerable. You will be. Love is vulnerability. It is trusting someone enough to let them see you at your lows. It is also giving completely to them. I know it's terrifying. It happened so easily once I opened my heart and mind up to it though. Falling in love with you was like breathing. I couldn't have stopped myself. It doesn't stop being terrifying, but the fears and anxieties change. Now I don't worry about how it will end. I worry about you getting hurt, about me not being enough, about your day being bad. Please, open your heart to the idea of falling in love, sweetheart, because I love you, and it's the best thing that has ever happened to me. Gabriel swore. His voice was calming, controlled, reverent. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I didn't know what I had done to warrant so wonderful a man, but as he spoke the words echoed in my heart and it opened. And that was when I realized it had been open for a while. And maybe I was already in love. Chapter 16. After eating a filling brunch at IHOP, Gabriel and I were discussing our plans for Thanksgiving in a few days while cuddled on his couch. "I'm going to my grandma's. She lives 2 hours away and I haven't spent Thanksgiving with her in years," I explained. Gabriel offered me a smile. "How long will you be gone?" I pondered the question for a minute. "Well, I expect that I will leave tomorrow night and get back Sunday evening," I answered, reaching out to rub his knee comfortingly. "That long?" he replied glumly. I wrapped my arms around his waist and cuddled into his chest. "It's only 5 days." I took a deep breath. "I'm going to miss you." Gabriel turned on his side and pulled me closer to him, taking deep breaths of my hair. "I don't know if I can make it that long," he said honestly. I let out a hum of agreement before I sat up quickly as a brilliant idea hit my mind. "Gabriel." Getting excited, my werewolf shot up in alarm, staring at me cautiously. What are you doing for Thanksgiving?" I demanded, my hands resting against his chest and staring into his eyes. He looked hesitant and concerned. "Why?" I frowned at his refusal to answer my question and poked his shoulder. "To my 𝐿𝐻𝐬𝐻𝐬 𝐿𝐻𝐬 hearts out thanks for your 𝐿𝐻𝐬𝐻𝐬 enthusiasm. Usually the pack gets together, so I guess I'll do that." "I don't know," Gabriel replied. I nodded. "Right. Well, as fun as that sounds." I trailed off, looking into his eyes and smiling widely. "How would you feel about coming to my grandma's with me?" Gabriel smiled brightly back, pressing a quick kiss to my lips. "I would love to. You should probably ask your grandma first, and I'll have to talk to Joel's mom to let her know." I nodded, full of excitement, and stood up to call Grandma. "Where are you going?" I shushed him and mouthed that I was on the phone. "Hello," I heard my grandma's voice. "Hi, Grandma." Bouncing on my toes with excitement. "Hey, Viola. How are you? I'm so excited to see you on Tuesday," she exclaimed. I could hear the smile in her voice. "I'm good. I'm actually calling about Tuesday." I trailed off, nervous to ask her. She knew almost everything about the Gabriel situation, which meant she was either be strongly for or strongly against his coming. "Yes," I could hear the impatience in her voice. "Is it okay if I invite Gabriel to come to Thanksgiving?" wincing after I spit it out. Sure. Just know that you will not be sleeping in the same bed. And you better be prepared to hang out with all of your cousins that are coming. She agreed. I sighed in relief. Thank you. I really mean that, Grandma. I love you. I'll see you Tuesday. 𝐿𝐻𝐸𝐾𝐲𝐻𝐸 𝐿𝐻𝐸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. 𝐿𝐻𝐸𝐾𝐲𝐻𝐸 𝐿𝐻𝐸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I love you too. 𝐿𝐻𝐸𝐾𝐲𝐻𝐸 𝐿𝐻𝐸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Goodbye. She saluted and hung up. I whirled around to look at Gabriel and jumped onto the couch next to him, bracing my hands on his shoulders so I didn't bounce right back off. She said yes. Did you tell Joel's mom? Smiling wide, Gabriel chuckled and pressed a kiss to my forehead. I will at dinner. Speaking of, do you want to come to the Pack for dinner? You can eat at the Pack house with Joel's family and I. Gabriel invited. I felt a smile split on my face. He was finally reaching out. I'd love to. Should we head out now? Maybe I can get a tour of your Pack while I'm there if we get there early. Meet some new people. I really just wanted to understand Gabriel better. I was almost in love with the guy and I didn't even know anyone else in his life except his second in command. There was so much more to uncover about him and I wanted to know it all. Someone's a little eager. Come, Gabriel hummed, standing up and stretching. I guess we could go, but just know that I'm a different person with you. I laughed. I couldn't imagine Gabriel as anything too drastically different than the gentle giant with a powerful punch that I knew. Sure. 𝐿𝐻𝐸𝐾𝐲𝐻𝐸 𝐿𝐻𝐸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Let's just get this show on the road, I encouraged, jumping off the couch and pulling on his arm until we got to the car. It's different when you have to be in charge of a whole group of people. I can't be the same person with you that I am with them. I'm not. Nice, he explained. I still wanted to know who he was. All of him. His warning wasn't a deterrent. It only intrigued me more. 𝐿𝐻𝐸𝐾𝐲𝐻𝐸 𝐿𝐻𝐸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Is that the Luna? A voice asked as soon as we stepped out of the car. I looked up startled to see a crowd of people waiting for us like we were celebrities. I smiled at them all and waved. I could get used to people being this excited to see me. Yes, this is my Luna, Gabriel answered stiffly, wrapping his fingers around mine and nodding to the people in acknowledgement. 𝐿𝐻𝐸𝐾𝐲𝐻𝐸 𝐿𝐻𝐸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐂𝐮𝐧𝐬 enthusiasm. We have to go. Nice to see you all. I called over my shoulder. I heard them start chattering as Gabriel pulled me away and I smiled up at him. That wasn't too different. Dave, they didn't do anything to wrong yet, he simply answered. I shrugged off his comment and focused on my surroundings. The buildings were fairly small, a little worn, but full of character. They appeared to be at least 150 years old by the looks of the architecture. I found myself staring in awe at the hand-painted signs declaring what each shop sold, the metal street lamps that looked to be right out of Singing in the Rain, and a family strolling down the road together throwing us glances as they passed and bowing their heads in respect. I tugged on Gabriel's shirt sleeve until he looked down at me with the stoic expression that had been on his face since we arrived. What? He grumbled. I ignored his tone of voice. Nothing would stop my good mood. It's beautiful here. Can we go in some of the shops? Please, I begged, giving him my best pout. His eyes darkened and I felt him about to cave when his eyes flickered away from mine and he shook his head, tightening his grip on my hand and pulling me alone. No, not today. I felt my mood deflate a little, but I settled with just observing. 𝐿𝐻𝐸𝐾𝐲𝐻𝐸 𝐿𝐻𝐸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐂𝐮𝐧𝐬 enthusiasm. I'll just look then, I conceded. Gabriel gripped my hand a little harder, and I felt an unsettling feeling of being observed wash over me. I started walking faster, moving closer to Gabriel. I didn't like the uncomfortable and ever-growing fear that was settling over me. I could tell he sensed my discomfort because he was holding my hand so tightly my fingers ached and his thumb was rubbing across my knuckles in reassurance. "Gabriel," I whispered, my voice shaky. So much for my determination to keep a positive attitude. He hummed quietly in acknowledgement. "Can we maybe go faster?" I mumbled, looking at my feet. I felt him sharply inhale and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Something was making him furious, and I was pretty sure it was whatever was freaking me out. "Yes, follow me," he demanded. I bit back a comment about how I was already doing that and followed him as he ducked inside a shop to our right. He nodded at the man behind the counter whose eyes misted over before he nodded and pointed behind him. Gabriel turned to me and said. I complied, wrapping my arms around his neck and my legs around his waist as he supported me with 2 hands under my rear end. He ducked behind the counter through the back room and somehow we were outside and Gabriel was sprinting. I buried my head in his neck and clutched onto him with all my might. After 2 minutes Gabriel stopped running and we were at his house. He unlocked the door and walked in quickly before he slammed the door, locked it, and sped us over to the couch. Dropping down, I was still shaken up from the weird feeling I hadn't, so I didn't bother sliding off of his lap. Not that he would have let me. I could tell by the tightness of his arms around me, he wasn't calmed down yet either. I pressed a kiss to his neck impulsively and noticed that he was shaking. Gabriel, I whispered. His hands were gripping my hips impossibly hard and I was trying to ignore the pain to get to whatever was upsetting him. Why? I trailed off and thought over my words carefully. I know that I didn't feel that way for no reason. Can you please explain what happened? Gabriel was still visibly shaken, and his eyes were jammed shut so tightly I was surprised his muscles weren't sore. I trailed my hands around his shoulders and down his arms, sliding my fingers into his firm grasp and resting my forehead on his. I watched as his eyes relaxed ever so slightly. I pressed a kiss on his lips, firm, reassuring. I wanted him to feel that I was there. It's a lot to explain, he finally replied. I've got all the time you need to listen. We're partners now. I might be able to help. Gabriel cleared his throat and nodded. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐸, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Give me a second to mind link Joel so they know that they don't have to wait for us to eat. He consented. I smiled softly at him. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐸, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. That's like telepathy, right? I confirmed. He just nodded tiredly. Packs are set up like this. Alpha is the leader. I am in charge of providing for, protecting, and selecting members of the pack. Beta is my second in command. He does all of the paperwork that I can't get to so that what I can do is more effective. Then come the pack members. Everyone functions in their own rights. Each person has different skillets that they have to use to benefit the pack in some way. Werewolves with medical background are expected to be available to provide care to pack members. Those with knowledge and a passion are teachers. Every member works together to create a fully functioning society, interdependent on one another. Gabriel had walked me into his study, pulling out maps and folders from cabinets as he explained. I nodded. Everything he was saying made sense. Well, there isn't just my pack. There are packs all over the world. Just like with humans we have war. We have miscommunication. Those things are all natural in our world. We also have wolves who desert the pack, in action or by announcing. When a wolf leaves a pack they are called rogues. Of course, they are free to join other packs should they and the other pack be willing, but usually wolves who leave their packs are criminals. Gabriel explained. He was outlining a big area on a map of the United States. This is where our pack is. I govern all the wolves here. Those who would like to are allowed to live in this village. It offers different pros and cons to living with the humans. Our wolves can be more free. There is considerably less strain to hide ourselves when we all live together. But living with a group of people who are territorial, temperamental, and possessive can be exhausting. Basically what I'm saying is there are wolves all over this area, inside and outside of the village. That I am in charge of, Gabriel said. I snatched his hand and held onto it for a moment, making sure he looked up into my eyes. I know that can't be easy. I'm sorry you've had to do that alone, I whispered. Gabriel sent me a warm smile, pressing a kiss to the back of my hand in a move so intimate I blushed. I pulled my hand out as bashfully. You were saying, a few years ago there was a war. All strong packs have allies. One of the packs we have an alliance with had an alpha who made a horrible mistake. However, was too great, and he refused to apologize to the pack he had wronged. The alpha of the offended pack couldn't let it slide, and I don't blame him. He declared war on our allies. The alpha, his name was Roger, begged all of the packs whom he had forged alliances with for assistance. I couldn't ask my men and women to risk their lives over something they had no control over for such a foolish reason. I told him he should reconsider going to war. He refused, and so I couldn't help him. Gabriel explained in a tortured voice. I nodded. That made sense. Well, allies lost. They suffered significant losses, and all for nothing. Good wolves died because of a stupid mistake. The only reason they weren't completely obliterated was the offended alpha had mercy on them and told them they had to disband their pack, join another, or continue living life as rogues. Gabriel explained. I thought about the heartache of the poo survivors from that pack. Losing loved ones is never easy, but to lose so many so instantaneously. My soul wept for their losses and took on the grief they felt. I took in as many into my pack as possible. I tried to do some background screening so that none of the corrupt wolves of that pack could make it in. But I couldn't get all of them. There are wolves from that pack, and even some original members of my own pack who blame me. He admitted. I looked up as breathed in deep at his wet eyes. It is not your fault, Gabriel, I declared vehemently, feeling tears prick at my own eyes in empathy. You saved lives by not involving your pack. Whatever they want to believe, you made the best decision you could have. You are not to blame for another man's mistake. I wish they saw it that way. He chuckled ruefully. Sometimes when the pain hurts so bad, we become blinded to reason. I explained, giving his hand another squeeze and then looking down at the map to distract me from the look in his eyes. I was feeling such protectiveness, devotion, and care for Gabriel that I suddenly became aware I was in love with him. I had been in love with him for a while, but to bring it up now when we were talking about something so heavy and so difficult for him would be inappropriate. I would have to wait for a better time. I wish it was just blame though. They started leading riots. They have been leaving threats on my desk for some time now, leaving promises of violent acts against innocent people unless I step down as alpha and are one of them to lead the pack instead. I know they want revenge. I know their plan will only lead to good people dying, and so I can't even negotiate with them because all they want is destruction. They claimed that because I was mateless, I was weak. They claimed that I was cruel, unfeeling, tyrannical. Every offensive thing to call a leader, and it wouldn't bother me if people weren't starting to doubt my ability to protect and provide for them. I wrapped an arm around his shoulders, cradling his body to me protectively, hoping to ease some of his pain. Well, you have a mate now, so that solves that problem, and I am going to make it my mission to help you figure this thing out. You aren't alone anymore, I swore to him, pressing a kiss to the top of his head and holding him tighter. I wish it would solve that problem, but now that they know you are my mate, they are going to target you, threaten you. They know I would do anything to keep you safe and unharmed. They also know that even if the threats don't work, if they succeed in killing you, they can claim I'm unstable and unfit to lead. Only it won't be a claim. It will be the truth. A wolf without a mate loses their tie to humanity. I would be rabid, angry. Exactly who they are trying to convince everyone I am. Gabriel ranted. I rubbed his back and pressed another kiss to his head. I couldn't think of anything else to do to comfort him. Well, can't you just arrest them? Or is that not something an alpha can do? 𝐾𝐥𝐩𝐴 𝐸𝐴 𝐸𝐴 for your unfailing 𝐃𝐥𝐃 enthusiasm. I can arrest people, but arresting a large group of seemingly upstanding members of the pack on grounds so serious when I have little proof is asking too much faith of my pack members. I have to get clear evidence before I can take care of the problem, but I'm worried I won't be able to collect enough until they've done something I won't be able to fix. Gabriel whispered hoarsely. Well, now you've got me to help. I pulled his face up until I could look into his eyes, but to see they were closed. I pressed his sweet pecks to his eyes and felt my heart stutter when his eyes opened and he gave me a sweet smile, pecking my lips and standing up. That I do, he whispered. I gave him a big grin and pulled him onto his feet. Let's go to dinner now. I gasped as a horrible thought occurred to me. Unless, is Joel one of the bad guys? Gabriel began laughing, scooping me up and hauling me against his chest. My face was red with embarrassment, but I didn't miss the opportunity to cuddle against him. They are targeting him too. Joel is my best friend. He doesn't have a bad bone in him. Trust me, sweetheart. This dinner will be once safe. Chapter 17. Are they going to like me? I whispered, suddenly worried as we approached what Gabriel told me was the pack house. It was, according to my knowledge, a clubhouse of sorts. People could come and go as they pleased during the hours it was open and use the facilities. When it closed, the house was reserved for the Beta family and the Alpha family to use according to their needs. Why are you even worried, sweetheart? It's not like it's my family. He laughed, giving my hand a quick squeeze before he pulled open the door and ushered me inside. Is that you, Gabriel? A woman's voice shouted from down the impressively sized hall. Yes, Sarah. He shouted back. I was a bit startled by how comfortable and relaxed he seemed, but then I smiled. I was glad he had people he could depend on. Did you bring your mate? A man shouted. I heard a smacking noise as we drew closer to a room where an amazing smell was coming from. Her name is Viola. I knew that voice as Joel's. Gabriel was snickering under his breath and I was still unnerved to see him so carefree. Come on, sweetheart. They're just in here, he explained, tugging on my hand into the room. The bright can lights coming from the ceiling lit up the room and gave the room a happy ambience. I found a smile on my face as I took in the room full of people giving us happy grins. Gabriel, long time no see, a boy greeted, standing up from his chair. I guessed he was 2 years younger than myself. Tall, lanky, and looking very similar to his older brother. He must be a hit with the ladies at his school. Hey Josh, how have you been? Gabriel stepped forward and shook the boy's hand. Glad to have you, said a man at the foot of the table. I assumed he was Joel's dad. He was smiling at me, and I realized what he had said was directed at me. Thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you all. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐿 Heartfelt thanks to your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Gabriel dropped his arm around my shoulder and smiled my favorite smile at me. The one where I felt like I was the most important thing in the world to him. Good to see you again, Joel replied, standing up and pulling me out of Gabriel's arms and into a hug. I giggled and hugged him back for about 5 seconds before Gabriel was tugging me back against him. That's enough, Joel, he growled warningly. I just smacked his chest. Be nice, I whisper scolded. He had the decency to look mildly rebuked and I counted it as a win. Where's Sarah? Gabriel asked, walking to the head of the table and hauling me along with him. He pulled out a chair to the right of the one at the head of the table and helped me get situated comfortably before pushing in the chair. When it finally clicked that no one had responded, I looked up to see all 3 of the men in Joel's family and 2 women staring at me with big grins on their faces and tears in the eyes of the older woman. You must be Viola, she guessed, giving me a watery smile and setting a large pot roast on the table. I blushed at the attention as she made her way over to me. I felt awkward sitting down while she was standing, but her warm smile helped ease my nerves. We've been waiting to meet you for a long time, she informed me. I'm afraid I'm not anything too special, but I am grateful to be here with you all, I replied, grabbing Gabriel's hand under the table and glancing at him with a blush and a smile. That is all we could have hoped for. She seemed to snap out of the daze and she shook her head, turning around with her hands on her hips. Now who is ready to eat? There was a collective cheer as the family began serving up their dishes, taking food left and right. I watched Joel dump half the gravy pitcher onto his plate, while Josh piled 5 rolls onto his. I found myself overwhelmed at the busy atmosphere. I couldn't decide what to eat and they were piling their plates so high the large amounts of food were almost obsolete. I sent a panicked look to Gabriel, and instead of helping he just began filling a plate with food. My right hand reached to grab a roll when Josh snatched it up and smashed it into his mouth. I was shocked to see that all the other rolls that were on his plate just a minute ago were already gone. My distress was going unnoticed and I had just resolved to go starving when a full plate landed in front of me. "You eat first," Gabriel insisted when I gave him an incredulous look. "The food is going to run out," I exclaimed quietly. "You eat. I'm not that hungry anyway. I can just eat some cereal at home." His eyes narrowed at me in a way that told me I was in trouble. I gulped at the delicious feeling of anticipation that raced down my spine. "You eat now or I won't eat," he threatened. I knew his metabolism was much faster than mine and that he was probably already starving. I also knew he followed through with his threat, so I had to think of something quick. "We can share. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿 Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Cutting a piece of the juicy roast with a fork and knife and holding it up for him. His eyes shone with affection and admiration and something bigger, and he nodded. He took the bite carefully, not breaking eye contact. Somehow this was more intimate than anything we had ever done before. So we took turns feeding each other while the conversation flowed. I learned the other girl. Not Sarah. Joel's mum was the sister. Her name was Jane and she was 15. Josh was a senior in high school, so only a year and a half younger than me. He winked at me one time, but Gabriel growled so loud my ears started ringing, so I don't think he'll be trying his suave act again on me. When the night was over I understood why Gabriel loved them so much. "Thank you so much for coming," Sarah said, putting me into a motherly hug. I hugged her back for a moment before stepping away to reply. "Thank you for having me. I had a really good time. And it was so nice to meet you all." Sarah got teary-eyed again. "I'm so grateful he found you. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿 Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing enthusiasm." He doesn't share much at first. He's not really one for heart-to-hearts. But I know he was lonely. He has a lot going on that he won't even tell us about, and I'm so glad he has you to lighten the load some," she explained quietly. I snuck a glance over at Gabriel who, despite his supernatural hearing, seemed to have not heard as he was preoccupied thumb-wrestling Josh for some handshake they had. I smiled wide as I watched him. I really loved him. I'm grateful too. He's a really special guy. I should probably be getting back, but I hope to see you again soon, I told her, walking over to Gabriel and wrapping my arm around his. He immediately tucked me closer to his side and took a deep breath of my scent. "Bye guys. See you soon," Gabriel shouted as we walked out and shut the door behind us. Once it was fully shut, I turned around and slapped his arm. "What was that for? I can't believe you were hiding those people from me. They are lovely and every moment in there was a dream." I crossed my arms to add to the haughtiness of my comment. Gabriel burst out laughing. When he didn't stop, I turned red. "What?" I demanded, embarrassed. He wrapped his arms around mine and pressed his forehead to mine, mirth still glowing in his eyes. "You are adorable. And you're right. I should have," he conceded. I tried and failed to fight back a smile, and I leaned up and pressed a kiss on his lips lightly, pulling away enough to wrap my arms around his neck and look into his eyes. "Gabriel," I took a deep breath, closing my eyes for a moment to gather my thoughts. "Yes, sweetheart." Nuzzling my face with his, I opened my eyes and looked at him determinedly. "I love you." He froze as if my words had completely shocked him. His eyes widened as they stared down at me. I was flushed and nervous at his silence. Then in an instant, he was crushing me into his chest where he spun around and around in a circle, whooping and hollering like a child. I was shrieking and giggling uncontrollably until he finally set me back on my feet, only to start smothering my face in kisses. "Gabe," I laughed, squirming. He didn't stop though, only kept smiling and kissing me. He made a smacking noise as he pressed kiss after kiss. I finally just gripped his face between my two hands and pulled my face out of reach of his lips. His eyes were shining with a kind of lightness I hadn't seen in him in a long while. He looked relaxed and content. "I love you," I whispered again when an uncontrollable amount of love filled my heart for him. I leaned up and pressed my lips against his firmly for a moment, pulling away to look at him. "I love you so much," he confessed. I blushed and smiled up at him. "I love you too," I told him again. I couldn't think of anything else to say. It was the most important thing I could think to tell him. "How am I supposed to take you home now?" Gabriel whined, cuddling me against his chest. I rested my head on his torso and mumbled, "What was that?" I pulled my face out from his chest for just a moment to reply to him. "You can stay over tonight if you'd like. But then no more sleepovers until we get married. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐷𝐸. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, 𝐂𝐥𝐻𝐳." He scooped me into his arms, laughing delightedly again and smacking a kiss onto the top of my head. "I love you," he yelled, spinning us around again. I gave in to my impulses and shouted out my response. "I love you too." The door banging open had both of us freezing. "Hey, we get it. Congratulations or whatever, but could you not be so loud?" Joel shouted out of his front door. Gabriel laughed and shouted back at him, "She loves me." Joel's irritated expression melted into one of happiness as he stared at his friend and I. He shook his head chuckling and waved goodnight to us. "Shh," I whispered loudly. Gabriel shook his head as he carried me to his car. "I'm sorry, but I can't. I can't be quiet while I'm this happy," he explained. I blushed and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. "I love you a lot, Gabriel. You're my best friend, the best boyfriend I could have dreamed of, and the best listener I've ever had. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I know I still have a lot more to learn about you and your world, but I really can't imagine a day passing by without you in it. I love you more than I have words to express. I'm so thankful God put you in my life because I needed you. I can't wait for you to meet my family this week." Cuddling further into his hold. "I love you too. I'm not very good with words, but I hope that through my actions you will see how much I love you. I can't wait to spend time with your family either. You're the best thing that has ever happened to me. Viola, I love you."